What's going on, you guys? Another beautiful Saturday here with our latest segment of Raiders' Latest News, or trying to think of it, Veggie Tales. Oh yeah, Silly Songs with Larry. Anyway, those of you who've been watching our latest segments on this, you know exactly where we're going with this, because it kind of ours like Raiders' Latest News, and it's like, Silly Songs with Larry. I don't know. We're trying to make a connection there with Veggie Tales from what we watched growing up, and maybe there's nothing there. But today we're here to kind of cover the latest in the Ben Johnson sweepstakes. They play the Commanders tonight. That's going to be really interesting. The Commanders might give them some problems. Obviously the Lions are a juggernaut on offense, but I don't know about that defense. I'm just being 100% real, but as it stands right now, there is a lot going on for the Raiders. Obviously, they are interviewing head coaches, they're interviewing GMs and all that kind of stuff, and I think it's going to be really interesting. But to me, the fun part about this whole thing is the fact that the Raiders are in a spot where they've got a lot of different choices, and I think that they might finally be finding, or at least looking for, stability. Speaking of stability, Bleacher Report came out with an article the other day. I think it was written by Jack Murray. Basically, all the executives see Tom Brady as being the voice of reason, or at least giving them some minute amount of stability, which I actually kind of agree with. Now, I'm not going to mention the whole article by Murray. He did a great job in the article and everything, but I do think it's worth mentioning that I kind of agree with this, because every couple of years the Raiders are moving on from a head coach / a GM and looking for a new philosophy and everything, and I think that Tom Brady does bring this team back down to earth in that, hey, let's find a good head coach, let's find a GM that we agree with the philosophy with, and let's go from there. And I know a lot of you have even mentioned this in the comment section down below, where they just have not done a good job of finding a way to stay consistent and find a philosophy and a coach and a culture that builds this team. And I think that Tom Brady definitely does provide that. And I think that there's a lot of similarities just in how he has conducted things and just being a winner. And obviously got him to being the greatest quarterback of all time. No debate there. Speaking of there being similarities, I think you know where I'm going with this, at least some of you. So back in the 2023 NFL draft, the Raiders selected Tyree Wilson with the 7th overall pick in the draft. Later in that draft, specifically in the 3rd round, number 70th overall, they selected Byron. Was it Byron Murphy? No, that's not it. Byron Young. Good Lord, I can't speak today. Sorry. So they selected Byron Young, the defensive tackle out of Alabama, or he was kind of a linebacker hybrid. He could go all over the place. But there's been some latest speculation that, in fact, maybe they were trying to select the Byron Young out of Tennessee. There were two that year, and Byron Young out of Tennessee, the one that plays on the Rams and, had 15 and a half sacks over the last 2 years, and a stud. Yeah, I think that there's been some communication issues there, because reportedly they had called the Tennessee Byron Young and said they were going to draft him in the 3rd round. Well, it was announced that they drafted the Byron Young out of Alabama. Great, because obviously the Byron Young out of Alabama was a lower-rated prospect, and I'll be honest, seeing this news back in the day, seeing him go in the 3rd round as opposed to the 6th or 7th, it did kind of shock me. I thought that this was weird. I thought that this was something where obviously mistakes happen in the draft, or at least you select the wrong player all the time. It happens, right? But the Raiders in this particular scenario just looked like they just did not get it right. Not even in just the fact that they drafted the wrong Byron Young, but just I don't know that this is necessarily true, because if you, like we mentioned, they did draft Tyree Wilson in that draft. I think it was 7 overall, if I'm not mistaken. And so they addressed the edge need, right? That was not necessarily a problem, but they addressed the edge need, and they still needed defensive tackle help. So maybe, just maybe, they did want to select Byron Young out of Alabama. I'll extend that olive branch, but if not, this is embarrassing. This is such a Raiders thing to do. Again, I will admit that they did select, or they were also looking for defensive tackle help, because they also did have Malcolm Kuntz, they had Tyree Wilson, they had Max Crosby, they had some depth, right? So I don't know that necessarily the Byron Young out of Tennessee would have made a lot of sense there. So, and I know that they were looking for defensive tackle help, so there is that. But anyway, speaking of there is that, great transition, Colton. The Commanders, former Commanders head coach Ron Rivera has been named a candidate for being interviewed for the head coaching opening at the Raiders, which makes some sense. I like Ron Rivera. I think he did some pretty good things with the Panthers, brought him to a Super Bowl back in the day, brought some stability to the Commanders organization that, let's face it, they hadn't seen in a while, and that was really good to see. So, Ron Rivera, as they continue to just interview everybody, I'm not opposed to that at all. In fact, I think that's the best way you got to do this thing. You got to find a way to make sure you get all of the maximum amount of guys in the office to interview as possible and just find the best one. So Ron Rivera added that list. Could be pretty interesting, or potentially maybe a name to watch if this whole Ben Johnson thing doesn't work out. I'm going to knock on wood. Don't worry. Speaking of not worrying and good things happening, the Raiders had a couple of players that were slated to make the 2025 Hall of Fame, College Football Hall of Fame, that is. Fantastic. Michael Huff, the former Texas stud. I like Michael Huff. I usually, when I played with him on Madden, I would always pick off my brother because I'd put him over the top and then I'd stack the box because he liked to run. But anyway, topic for another day. Michael Huff looks like he's going to be inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame, as well as John Henderson, the former first-round pick by the Jaguars. That dude was a mountain. He was like 6'7", 350 if he was an ounce. Just dude was a stud. Came and played for the Raiders a couple of years. Didn't do a whole lot. Like, he was good in the run game and stuff, but obviously didn't do. I don't think he registered a sack for the Raiders. But good news for those guys getting into the College Football Hall of Fame. Really happy for those guys. Speaking of college football, so the big question here is obviously which quarterback are the Raiders going to take when they get to that particular position. But if I was a betting man, I would honestly say that this class reminds me so much of the Kenny Pickett class, where everybody was slating quarterbacks to go in the top picks, and it just didn't happen because the quarterbacks in that particular year, like, they weren't that good. And so this might be one of those situations where, like, Cam Ward probably will go first overall to the Titans. Like, that's just what it's going to be. Or maybe they go in a different direction. Maybe they trade down. I don't know. But especially after they hired the former Chiefs assistant general manager, big-time stuff there. I'm excited for the Titans. But there's a lot of stuff up in the air right now, and I don't know that Shedeur Sanders will actually I don't think he's going to go. He might not go in the top 5. Like, I'm just going to be honest. I think that there's a lot more talented players. And yes, there's some quarterback needy teams and everything, but I don't think that Shedeur Sanders might go in the top 5. Could you see a position where maybe he does drop to the Raiders there? It's definitely a possibility. And so, I think the Raiders are in a good spot where I think you try to build the rest of this team around what you have with guys like Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers and Max Crosby and Robert Spillane and all that stuff. At the same time, you go and find your future franchise quarterback, which is going to be huge too. So overall, it's interesting just to kind of see, and it's going to be interesting to see how the draft falls and everything. But like we said, there's a lot going on right now with the Raiders. They continue to look for their new head coach and general manager. So more news on that tonight as the Lions play the Commanders, which will be a good game. Like I said, I think the Commanders might have their number. But overall, let us know what you guys think. That is our Raiders' latest news. Silly Songs with Larry. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe down below, and we'll see you on the next video.